Mr. Chairman.
Alistair Scott.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd like to go through a couple of, or in Schedule 2, the list that has been commented on earlier is to understand, perhaps Mr. Parker could address how that list was derived and why some other vulnerable groups are not on the list. And in fact, he has already explained why the newspaper pamphlet delivery group, which was on the list, now has been excluded. But I'd also like to point out and ask the situation where regarding the multiple sources of income. So we've got where you have multiple sources of income doing one of these jobs, you're excluded from this bill. So we could have a situation where we've got a Sparky, for example, who has multiple sources, like a courier driver, which would exclude them from the bill. So we could have a cleaning services person, contractor, with multiple sources of income, excluded from the protection that this bill is aimed to protect. Courier services I've mentioned. Food catering services, one could imagine a cleaner going from one restaurant to another and be treated by both restaurants as a contractor and maybe even being abused by those unscrupulous employers, which is what they are after all. Those dishos would not be protected because they've got multiple sources of income. Well, Disho's a guy who does the dishes, of course. No, not Bisho, Disho. And Mr. Bailey asked the question earlier: telemarketing services and market research services. Why are they on the list, and why do they need such protection? So, and I don't understand with these multiple sources. So we could have a person doing the same job from one source, and we could have a second person doing the same job but from multiple sources, and the multiple sourced person would be excluded from the protection that this bill is designed to give. So I'd like Mr. Parker to explain that. And so we get to a situation where we've excluded so many people that are apparently vulnerable that this bill becomes redundant, and that they're left, those multiple employed contractors are left to the protection of employment law, which is where we should be looking at and looking to ensure that poor employers, not contractors, they are employers disguised as contractors, should be targeted. This bill does not do what it is designed to do. That is what I would say. And I think there's a better way of doing it. And I think that the labour inspectors have more resource in the last budget, given to them in the last budget. That is in my view, that is the appropriate place to give the resource, and for those guys to enforce the law that already exists around employer-employee relationships, and dig in to situations where employer-employee relationships are disguised inappropriately and as contracts.
Order.
And they should
Order.
be.
Member will resume a seat. 2 points that I want to make to the member. The first is about the first 3 minutes of his speech. I think he even admitted by saying that Mr. Bailey had said it all before was repetition. So I can warn the member for that. The second thing is that the member can't focus in anything other than a passing reference to other approaches to the problem. Okay. This bill has been accepted at second reading, and we're talking about the detail that's in here now, not alternative approaches.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The detail of this bill is so confused has been used before. It's ambiguous and confusing. I'm going to use the word confusing. It confuses the relationship between employer-employee with that of contractor-contractee, and that is why we cannot support this bill.
Mr. Chairman.
David Parker.